Let the torch of freedom burn.
This is the intersection of faith and the culture. It's WallBuilders Live. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Rick Green. I'm a former Texas legislator and America's Constitution coach. Normally here with David Barton, America's premier historian and our founder at WallBuilders, and Tim Barton, national speaker and pastor and president of WallBuilders. But we were together in Georgia doing a barnstorming event, and we want to bring that to you today on WallBuilders Live. We've been trying to sort of mix it up, give you a little bits and pieces of that barnstorming tour, but also give you election updates. Not a lot of big things have happened the last couple of days that would take up a whole program, so we're going to save that for tomorrow and do an entire election update tomorrow. For today, I'm just going to have us pick up right back where we left off yesterday from the Georgia barnstorming event, and just encourage you to continue to pray for the election, to know that this is not over. There's a lot of major constitutional things that still have to happen to determine the presidency when you have one this close, and when you have states that are so much in chaos, where the elections really have been not just close, but actually where there have been so many problems breaking the law with these election schemes put in place by governors and secretaries of state and local officials, when you have these unconstitutional rules that were changed at the last minute. And then when you do have so much fraud that has been brought forward, in the past, when we've had presidential elections like that, it took time to get it worked out and to figure out who actually won the election. So be patient, let the Constitution play out, pray for God's will. Pray that the Constitution and the rule of law will be upheld. It is bad for our country if that is not done, not just for this election. It's bad for our country for the future, but it bodes not well for the rule of law and for future elections and just for law itself. So pray that we will uphold those things, that we'll come back to our senses on those things. But in the meantime, as those things are playing out, we want to encourage you with some biblical citizenship advice that we gave at our Barnstorming Georgia event. A lot of great speakers that were a part of that, and so we're going to pick up right where we left off yesterday. If you missed, by the way, we talked more yesterday about what could happen with the Electoral College and the day before as well. So go into the archive section at our website, wallbuilderslive.com, and then make sure you tune in tomorrow on Friday as we give a full election update. All right, let's jump into that Georgia barnstorming event. You're listening to WallBuilders Live, and here's the WallBuilders Live team at Georgia as we barnstorm the state.
If every one of us as individuals just said, you know what, I'm going to personally do the Great Commission. I'm going to go find one person to disciple one person this year. So all I'm going to do, I'm going to do nothing this year but get one person. If every one of us did that at the end of this year, we would jump from 32% of the world being Christian to 64% of the world being Christian. If we did that 2 years in a row, the entire world would be Christian in 2 years, just if every one of us only took one person. If we get just one person, and see, that's the...
And let's back up too, because as you pointed out, only 6% of American Christians have a biblical worldview, right? So that number 32% of the world being Christian probably is a skewed high number, because people can profess it, doesn't mean they're really living according to that, right? So if we said in America, 65% profess Christianity, but only 6% have a biblical worldview. So let's just back it up a few years, right? But if 6% duplicate and become 12, and then 24, and then 48, it might take a couple more years.
To not just be Christians, but be biblical Christians.
To disciple.
Apply their disciple.
Yeah. And so that's part of the point is, don't think that, you know, they're spending hundreds of millions on the other side. This is tough. I don't know that many people. Great. You don't know that many people. Go get the ones you do know. Song of Solomon 8:13 says, your friends listen to your voice, so speak. Great command. Just talk to the sphere of influence you've got. The other thing I'll throw out is the American Revolution. We often think of that as all the patriots finally whipped all the British. It wasn't that at all. Only 25% of Americans supported the American Revolution. 25% opposed it, and 50% didn't care as long as it didn't affect them. Out of the 25% who supported American independence, only 9% actually took part in doing anything in the American Revolution. It was a small minority that won what we're celebrating tonight. So let me encourage you, don't think small about yourself. Don't be too small in your own eyes. You take what you can do, and even if it's 1, 2, 5 people, whatever it is, you do it. It will make a huge impact. That's how we win.
On top of that, the idea that God has not called you to reach Nancy Pelosi, okay? You can just take some comfort in that fact.
I really did. I tried.
Right? Now, maybe you, but not us, right? I don't take responsibility for that one. But the reality is, God doesn't call us to do something beyond what he's given to us, right? God's called us to reach our sphere of influence. Now, when God increases your sphere of influence, then that's a different level of responsibility. But if you go back, the name WallBuilders, which is where our organization, right? That's the name, Bible book of Nehemiah. If you remember, Nehemiah was part of the Babylonian captivity. As Nehemiah is there, he's the cupbearer to the king. And his heart's so grieved that his home, Jerusalem, has been torn down. The walls have been torn down. The king sees it. He's like, well, bro, right? Go back and rebuild. I'll help fund it. Here's stuff. Well, Nehemiah now has been given permission. He actually has funding. He's going to go get this thing done, except he's having a hard time finding people to join with him. So he starts calling people, everybody come back to the city and everybody do what you can. It's interesting. If you're going to rebuild a wall, you would think you probably need some, right, engineers, architects, stonemasons. If you read the book of Nehemiah, that's not who came with him. The people that came with him, none of them were builders, but it was people not qualified in world standards, but people who were willing to roll up their sleeves and work. And when Nehemiah called them and said, everybody come on. In fact, the priest, he said, everybody live inside the city. The priest, you can just build what's in your backyard. But when everybody started doing what they could, people told them it couldn't be done. In 52 days, they had rebuilt the wall. And here's why this matters. Because for so long, we have looked to somebody else who had the title, who had the degree, right? Who had that whatever profession, and thinking that's the one that needs to solve the problem. No. When we roll up our sleeves and say, you know what, I might not can do everything, but I can at least build my backyard. If every church just took care of their community, you know how many communities in America would be taken care of? All of them. Because there's churches in every community, but we often get so overwhelmed by the national issues that it discourages us from even getting involved in the local issues. God has not called us to solve all the national problems, but he has called us to make a difference where he's planted us. So wherever you are, that's who you should be reaching out to. And let me throw another thought for you. If you read in the Gospels, Jesus told a lot of parables. Many of the parables, he says, the kingdom of heaven is just like this. And he would talk about a master who had servants, and the master goes away and he comes back. One of the things that we've probably all heard messages on, like at the very end, we all want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Let me throw out a thought for you. Jesus never set the expectation that it should be well done, good and successful servants. God didn't call you to fight the battles that you're going to win. He called you to be faithful regardless of the outcome. Now, we can talk about the fact that faithfulness often produces the win, because the people that stay engaged in the fight long enough end up getting the win, right? If you get up every time after you've been knocked down, eventually you're going to win. God has not called us just to success after success. He's called us to be faithful. And that means even if we're rolling up our sleeves and we get involved and we go, oh, it didn't work this time, that's okay. He didn't call you to be successful. He called you to be faithful, right? He called us to be obedient. And our calling on our life does not change regardless of who's the president, right? Well, I got involved and voted. It didn't work. So that doesn't change anything. God's calling on our life doesn't change. God's called you to be faithful. You faithfully reach out to your friends. You faithfully show up and vote. You faithfully, courageously stand up when nobody else does. And one of the things, I'm going to date myself now with one of the greatest movies ever when I was growing up, Braveheart. Okay. And actually, for some of you, like Christian circles, you weren't allowed to watch that. I probably wasn't either. So I've just heard this was in the movie, right? I don't even know. Somebody told me one time this was in the
your
movie.
Mom's over there. You know, Cheryl's watching right now.
So one of the things that William Wallace, famous line from the movie is, men don't follow titles, they follow courage. One of the challenges is that we have to be courageous people that stand up faithfully doing what God has called us to do. It is very interesting how often the crowd is just waiting for somebody to stand up and do the right thing. And when somebody stands up, they go, I'm going to follow that person. There's a reason Donald Trump is so loved by so many people, because finally there is somebody telling somebody off that we've been waiting for a long time. God has called you to be that for your friends. Amen. God has called you to be the one to stand up, be faithful, be courageous, and don't worry about the outcome. God didn't call you to be successful necessarily. Now, we all want success, and I pray for success. God's called us to be courageous. So we don't need to worry about the national level. Don't feel overwhelmed. The walls were rebuilt by Nehemiah when everybody did what they could do. If everybody says, okay, I'm rolling my sleeves, I'm going to go reach my friends, I'm going to be faithful, I'm going to be courageous, that's who God uses. And that's when, like Congresswoman Bachmann pointed out, that's when Gideon's army becomes so special. Not because they were the strongest, the biggest, the toughest. They weren't. They were just the ones at the end that God said, that's who I'm going to use. And I'm going to show my glory through those people. That's who we want to be. The faithful, the courageous, reaching the people in our sphere of influence.
Hey, Tim, I looked up, I pulled up Nehemiah in my version, and it says, in order to rebuild the walls, I need biblical citizens in Georgia. That's all it's going to take. Right there. I mean, I'm just reading my, we need biblical citizens.
That was second Nehemiah, right?
That was second Nehemiah.
Second
It wasn't
okay.
in first Nehemiah.
And there's a practical way to do it. I did this year just before the day before voting, and I called every single person in my immediate family to make sure that they were going to vote, that they had a plan so that they were done, because I started with the family first. That's something every single person can do. Now, if there's somebody in your family you're thinking maybe isn't going to vote with the right way, you could maybe forget their number. But otherwise, do your family. Start with your family. Maybe you're in a couple's Bible study. I mean, you've got a little group that you go with.
Right.
That's the point.
That's
and
right.
So seriously, it may not seem like a big deal, but those numbers add up quick. You look around this room, and each one of you are calling maybe 5 people, and then you multiply that, what that's going to mean here in Georgia, and you think, I might save America by my 5 people, and my 5 people, and my 5 people. That's what our point is here, that your 5 could be the difference that makes the save. So do it. That's the thing. Make the calls. And if you want to text them and have a conversation. However you do it, but do it.
Right.
That's the point. You actually complete the task. So I wrote all their names down, and I just sat there and I made sure I got them all called. So I knew, like, son, daughter-in-law, mother, aunt, went around the board, got just my immediate family, got them done. Then after that, I went to our couple's Bible study, and I went there. And that's what I did. I did those 2 groups. That doesn't seem like much, but just think, I maybe touched 15 people to make sure that they voted. You can do the same thing. That's what we're asking you to do.
That's literally
it's not hard.
That's literally being a force multiplier. I mean, you're multiplying yourself, and you can do it by 5 times, 15 times. Some of you get more than that. Just depends on your sphere of influence and how much time and energy you're willing to put into it. And we're going to talk about some of the detailed things in just a second. One of the long-term, bigger picture things, even beyond this particular election, is for you to be a biblical citizen and learn what that means in our culture and understand our founding documents. If you're going to render unto Caesar what is Caesar's in America, you are Caesar. So if we, the people, are in charge, we have to know how to do that. We have to know our founding documents to do that. And so we've been doing Constitutional Live at WallBuilders for a long time, and had about 150,000 people have gone through that class. We've got a new version coming out in January called Biblical Citizenship in Modern America. That's what this is all about. And some of the new pieces of that, we just scratched the surface tonight. You just got a little taste. And one of the coolest things that we're adding to biblical citizenship this year is Kirk Cameron's explanation of that Pilgrim's Monument that he did that movie about. And we're super excited about adding that to biblical citizenship so that churches all over the country can learn that, and that you can host that in your home, in your living room, at your church, wherever you may want to do it. But tonight, Kirk has joined us virtually to be able to share a little bit of encouragement about what's happening here in Georgia and nationally. So Kirk Cameron, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, everybody. So great to see you, Rick. Thank you. And Tim and David and Michele, it's so good to be joining you. I've just been sitting here watching along with everybody else, everything that you're saying. And wow, Tim, that is so encouraging what you're saying. I mean, I've been waiting for this. I've been waiting for a biblical citizenship handbook. Everything from the class to these kinds of events, I think are so important because as most people might assume, I live out here in Hollywood, California. I get a chance to travel around. And one of the big things I'm hearing from people is, we get it. We're on board. We've been red pilled. We understand. We're aware of what's going on. What do we do? What do we do? And you guys are talking about boots on the ground, what it is that we can do in our homes, with our families, with our friends, with our Bible study groups. And this is, I think, exactly what we need. So everybody, I just want to encourage you. Everything that you're hearing tonight is so very important. Just listen to everything, believe what they're telling you. We really can make the difference. And this is what's been going through my mind. I remember a pastor friend of mine has recently said in church that he believes that God is using this time to awaken his church.
Hey, friends, quick break. We're going to dive right back in. Just a little break here. We'll jump right back into that Georgia Barnstorming event. So stay with us. You're listening to WallBuilders Live.
Hey guys, we want to let you know about a new resource we have at WallBuilders called The American Story. For so many years, people have asked us to do a history book to help tell more of the story that's just not known or not told today, and we would say very providentially in the midst of all of the new attacks coming out against America, whether it be from things like the 1619 Project that say America is evil and everything in America was built off slavery, which is certainly not true, or things like even the Black Lives Matter movement, the organization itself, not the statement Black Lives Matter, but the organization that says we're against everything that America was built on, and this is part of the Marxist ideology. There's so many things attacking America. Well, is America worth defending? What is a true story of America? We actually have written and told that story, starting with Christopher Columbus, going roughly through Abraham Lincoln. We tell the story of America not as the story of a perfect nation or a perfect people, but the story of how God used these imperfect people and did great things through this nation. It's a story you want to check out. WallBuilders.com, The American Story.
Welcome back to WallBuilders Live. Today we're sharing with you that Georgia Barnstorming event where we had a lot of great speakers with us and an opportunity to talk about what true biblical citizenship is. How do we as Christians, how do we do that duty of being salt and light? How do we actually do our duty as Christians? What does the Bible tell us about being citizens? And then how do we do our duty as citizens under our particular government and our Constitution? That Georgia Barnstorming event was a fantastic time. Let's just jump right back into where we left off before the break. Here we are in Georgia, barnstorming the state for biblical citizenship.
We've been asleep for decades in many ways. We've been doing some great jobs in certain sectors, but in other areas we've neglected. And he went on to say how sleep is something God's ordained as a natural part of the cycle of the day. We sleep for 8 hours a day. And there's nothing wrong with sleep, but he talked about the fact that when we're asleep, we're unaware, we're unconcerned, and we're uninvolved with the things going on around us. And in the church, I feel like there has been, in fact, I know that there have been sectors of culture that we have been unaware of our duty. We have therefore been unconcerned about us really fixing it and changing things, and we've been uninvolved. And now's the time that I think the Lord is waking up his church. And my wife encouraged me with something that during this time where we can become fatigued with all of the chaos and with all of the deception, with the fraud that we're seeing, with these Marxist and socialist ideas coming into our country full force and have been for a while. She said, Kirk, remember that verse that we've all heard so many times? If my people will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways. And I know many of us are tired of hearing that verse because we've heard it so many times. But she reminded me of something really encouraging in there. She said, it doesn't say if the Marxists and the socialists will finally humble themselves and become Christians, if the atheists will, if these other people will just get on board the right program. She said, no, it's what God's always been concerned with. He's always said to his people, I'll take care of your enemies. They're big and they're bad and they're nasty. They're well-funded, they're organized. I'm paraphrasing, but I can take care of all of them. What I'm interested in is the purity of the hearts of my people. And if it's really that simple, if God's people, if Christians will assume a posture of humility and repentance, and we get our part right and fully turn to the Lord in obedience and begin to conform our hearts and our homes and our communities and our nation to the word of God by being obedient to what he says. And in America, we're responsible. We the people are the government. We need to self-govern, govern our homes, and then we govern the nation. And we do that by participating in the voting process, among other things. That if we'll do that, God will take care of the enemies. So that encourages me a ton, because that means we can do this. It doesn't matter if we're outnumbered. It doesn't matter if we're outgunned. And there are millions and millions and millions of us that if we just get our part right, God will honor that and multiply our efforts, and we don't have to see the decline of this nation. I'm in it to win it. I am fighting, not based on probabilities of who's going to become the next president, but based on the principle that truth and liberty are worth fighting for no matter what the cost. And if we give up the fight now, we don't have a soul. We have our children's skin in the game and our grandchildren's skin in the game. So all of you who are here, thank you. You are the hope. God's power working through you and you being obedient and doing your part. That is the hope in our country. That's our hope in this world. And I just want to thank you for being there. I would love to be there with you, but it's my wife's birthday and I've got linguine and clams on the stove right now. And I'm going to have to get back in there to make sure that my wife's birthday is a home run.
Hey, Kirk, thank you, man. Thank you, brother, for doing this tonight. So good.
Thank you. Thank you, Michele. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Tim and David.
Yeah, tell your wife thank you and happy birthday, and thank her for that encouraging word. I think that is extremely important for us to know. And thanks for doing Non-Essential, man. Watching that a few weeks back, that packed house, putting that together, it was so encouraging. I think it helped to wake up a lot of churches around the country. So thanks for all you're doing, man. Really, really appreciate you coming on tonight.
Oh, thanks for inviting me. God bless you guys.
Now, Michele, you were there at Plymouth on the anniversary. We interviewed you that day, and you were actually there. And I know you've seen Kirk's film Monumental as well. That's really what we're talking about reviving here. We're basically saying the very same principles they put in place 400 years ago. That's what we're fighting for in Georgia.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We actually went in early October. Pastor Carter Conlon of Times Square Church just called people together to come and pray for the nation. It was just before the election. So we all went there because it's called Lot 1. It's the very first house that was ever built in America. The first family lived there. The first prayer meeting was held there. The first vote was held in that room. The very first international treaty was signed with Massasoit in that room. And that we were in that room where the foundation still stands for that building. And that's why it was so important, because this is covenant. Yeah. That's what it was. It was covenant. And when you make covenant with God, there's an eternal aspect. Yeah. And that's why this is so important. This eternal aspect of the flow of the gospel, it runs through the United States. You know, they came here as a church plant. And the gift that God gave is the greatest number of missionaries in the gospel ever ran out of the United States then back all across the world because of the magnificent society. You see, it is worth saving. And that's why it's imperative that at this moment, this 400-year anniversary, that we remember who we are, we remember whose we are, and why we're here and what our purpose is. Again, it isn't just for ourselves. It's on 400 years into the future, should the Lord tarry.
Amen.
You know, sometimes this steps on people's toes when we say that as Christians, we're supposed to be active. We're supposed to be engaged in what's happening in our communities and in our government. And they say, well, separation of church and state, or if I want to be a good Christian, I'm not supposed to offend anybody. Just to let you know from the beginning, if we step on your toes tonight, we apologize because our intent is to stomp on them. We want to wake people up, right? Shake them out of their slumber. So let's hit the nail on the head right now. Let's just talk biblical citizenship. What does that mean? And why should Christians be involved in government?
The concept that Christians should not be involved is illogical. Imagine being given a great, magnificent house, just a wonderful house, and not doing anything with it. If it's given to you and you don't do anything with it, it will deteriorate, it will fall apart, and that's like our country at this point. We've been given a gift that no other nation's ever had. No nation survived under the same piece of paper as long as we have under this Constitution. It belongs to us. It's our government. It's not somebody else's.
All right, friends, we are out of time for today. That was the Georgia Barnstorming event we've been bringing to you here in bits and pieces on WallBuilders Live. We'll have more of that for you next week. Tomorrow, be sure and tune in for a full election update. We've been giving you as much as we can of that on a daily basis, trying to just report truthfully when it goes our way, when it doesn't go our way, give you some of the history and the constitutional perspective of how this thing should play out if we're going to uphold the rule of law and the Constitution. We would challenge you to do the same thing. We have a Constitution Coach program where we encourage people to host Constitution classes in their homes, at their church, in Sunday school classes, at the local library. I mean, wherever you can get people together. Perhaps even online through Zoom. That's how a lot of people are doing classes. We've got thousands of these going on around the country, and you can be the catalyst for a restoration of biblical values and constitutional principles. Join us at constitutioncoach.com. You can dial into our Monday night class that we hold nationally with thousands of people and just observe and ask questions if you like. Or you can start your own class right now. You don't have to know anything about the Constitution or the law or history. You just get people in the room and hit play, and you can learn with your friends and family. It's a great way to help restore these things and also just to have good fellowship. Check it out at constitutioncoach.com. And then last thing before we run out of time, wallbuilderslive.com. That's the place to make a contribution and to help us continue to speak truth and be salt and light. wallbuilderslive.com. We sure appreciate you listening today to WallBuilders Live.
We stand undivided forever.